Video is starting. Yay. Oops. I actually should be waiting for... I should actually turn off that music in the background. Ha. That's how. Ha! I really am here. I didn't go away. But I know I'll get yelled at by the internet lords if I have music playing in the background. All right. Well, I'm usually way more organized walking into this, but if you happen to wander on for our lovely open forum, let us know who you are and where you're from. Presumably, I will see it in the chat on here somewhere. And if you've got any questions, let us know who you are and where you're from. Oh, and it is officially 6 o'clock, so somebody's on here. So, yay, welcome. And I'm going to do my station identification here. If you don't know, I'm Bob Linde from Traditions School of Herbal Studies and Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies, and Traditions Teas, Tonics, and Coffee, and the plant nursery in the back, and, you know, a pigeon in a pear tree or something. But, oh yay, more people. Awesome. So, if you don't know it, you can find out more about our clinical practice here at acuherbals.com, acuherbals.com, and we have a variety of acupuncturists and herbalists here, and a spiritual practitioner 6 days a week for your healthcare pleasure. And we've also, you can see a part of it here. You throwing things. You can see part of it here as well. We have a fully stocked apothecary of both Western and Chinese herbs. I would say at this point, I think we're up over 1,000 herbs. And we've also got Tradition School of Herbal Studies, which we have from beginner all the way through clinical practice, both a Western and Chinese herbal program. And we've also got a lot of Thursday and Friday night and a few weekend intensives that are standalones for folks who aren't ready to jump off the deep end and look at that clinical practice. I know everybody's excited. Our Western students are getting their advanced herbal medicine making class with Ruthie this evening, or tomorrow evening, sorry. And if you see a bunch of people wandering by, it's because there is also the trade blanket going on here. Despite the rain, we brought that into the classroom, and somehow we're going to make it all happen. So if you're just joining us, let us know who you are, where you're from. If you got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will get on it. What fun things have we got going on here? We've got some more music coming up, and it's not on the schedule yet, but I know we've got in about 2 weeks, we've got some more music on a Saturday night coming up. Another super lovely chill music coming up as they travel through the state of Florida. We've got Holy River coming up on 4/4. We'll have the link to get tickets for that someday soon. Hopefully I'll get that done this weekend. And of course, not tonight, but next Friday is the Full Moon Market. So the Blue Raven Full Moon Market and Drum Circle, one of my favorite events that goes on once a month. Is always a good time. Oh, there's lots more people. Let us know who you are, where you're from, and what are we up to? The last class of Business of Herbalism is coming up, TCM formulation guidelines. Ooh, my next food class. It's a weird one. It's called How to Boil Water, but basically I'm going to look at one of the most common complaints I hear from people as they... and somebody give me a thumbs up or something in the chat so I know I'm looking at the right place. I see lots of you on there. One of the most common problems I see, or I hear from my... there we go. Hey, Stevie. Oh, boy, that's harder than you think. Is like for a single person, how do you make fresh food so you're not wasting a lot of food and things like that? And so the class I've got coming up on the 13th, it looks like, is going to be really focused on how to make some simple, healthy stuff that you don't need great culinary skills in order to do. And I'm going to have to dial it back because I like to cook, so I'm going to try to make it as simple as humanly possible and still really nutritious and following those general concepts of Chinese medicine. What else have we got coming up? Daddy for the Herbalist always goes on every month. Rishi is on the 20th of March with Ruthie. And seasonal medicine making for the spring equinox is coming up on the 26th. Oh, and I got to put this one out there for all y'all just jumping on. Wilderness Survival Weekend Intensive with moi is March 28th and 29th for those of you who want to prepare for the zombie apocalypse. Uniquely so in our Florida biome here, that we do a little bit of the field, a little bit in the classroom, talking about everything from survival at sea to survival on the coastline, and some really basic stuff. So it's definitely a beginner wilderness survival class, fire making, being able to find water, some basic first aid stuff, and the likes. And yeah. And don't forget Herb Day. It's right around the corner. I had propaganda. I don't know. It's May 2nd. It's National Herb Day. We will have our usual insanity here. So make sure you put it on your calendar. Leave that day totally free. It will be our students teaching, our professionals teaching. I will continue to make a lot of weird food for everybody to enjoy. All right, let's get going. Stevie, I'm going to just start with yours because it's really, really an important question. And I say it's a harder one to answer. There are, I think it's rxlist.com. There's a bunch of sites out there that are a good resource to look up drug-drug interactions and over-the-counter OTC things and drug interactions. It will have some basic nutrient herb interactions, but the reality is they're horribly inaccurate because there isn't a lot of research out there. There is not a lot of clinical issues out there, and it becomes the thing that paralyzes so many herbalists. Is like most people are on some sort of a prescription medication, and you know, somewhere online on the school's YouTube page is the herb-drug interaction class, the free one I do every year. That one's really helpful for a clinician. But there's next to no research on it. And so sometimes they go on total conjecture, and most of the time when you look at the research, it's going to say total conjecture. It will sometimes say something like these two may compete for the same pathways through the liver as it breaks down those nutrients or chemicals. And what I find is going with that premise that I teach all in class of kind of two concepts. And you know, one is narrow therapeutic margin medications. And those narrow therapeutic margin medications is fancy talk for things like anti-seizure medication. If you don't get enough of that medication, if we change the way it's processed and secreted through the body, then you're going to have a seizure, and that can be dangerous. That can be life-threatening. At the very least, you might lose your driver's license. HIV medications, if somebody doesn't get the right amount, their viral disorder can start to cause some serious problems. Immunosuppressants, and I'll put a caveat, most immunosuppressants are used for things like autoimmune disorders. Nobody dies if they have a bad day. But if the immunosuppressant is because they have a organ transplant, then literally their life is threatened if we interfere with that. So there's a few things along those lines, certain antivirals, immunosuppressants, seizure meds. You can kind of put the MAOIs in there. It's not, they are a therapeutic margin, narrow therapeutic margin, but not as scary as you would think. Your blood thinners are in that category, but again, not all the blood thinners. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in all of that. And what I'll say is, as a general rule, and I'm speaking in generalities now rather than this drug and that that herb, the idea that really bitter herbs or really sour herbs will change the way a drug is processed through the body. And so, oh, I didn't say chemotherapy. Got to make sure I say chemotherapy as well. Chemotherapy for cancer, also a narrow therapeutic margin. So that's a biggie of like making sure we don't give super bitter, super sour stuff at the same time as those more life-threatening medications. The other thing, and this is where I find the most adverse reactions, and that is when we take an herb and a drug for the same thing. Let's say you're on an antidepressant and it's doing its job, and you take an herb that's considered good for depression. And one of the side effects that we see with antidepressant medications like the SSRIs or the SNRIs is we see some sedation, a lack of libido, lack of motivation, things like that. Well, if you take a therapeutic dose of an herb, you may get a little bit of sedation from it. And so it's a multiplier, right? So I'm like, here's my level of sedation with the medication. Now I add an herb on there that maybe is a little too relaxing or sedating. Now I'm really going to have a hard time going to work. Same is true if I'm on a blood pressure medication. Yay, it's pretty much being controlled with the blood pressure medication. We're like, wait, hawthorn's good for the blood pressure, and so it's going to bring the blood pressure down lower. Low blood pressure, you could get dizzy, you can pass out. So too much of a good thing is too much. So it's literally, I see this every day, and it's funny. When I don't have enough questions, sometimes I just go on one of the 4 billion little Facebook groups I'm on for herb stuff, and everybody's like, "What do you got for disease?" Right? Like, what do you got for high blood pressure? What do you got for stage 4 cancer? All of these like serious things. Nobody's listing the prescription medications, because if you have high blood pressure, chances are you're on blood pressure medications. Chances are you're also on something for sleep. Chances are you might be having a blood sugar issue as well. And so these people are asking for an herb, a single herb that's good for a complex medical issue, and they're taking them both together. And so even scarier if they stop that medication, but if they put that herb and it works on top of that medication, which also works, you're going to start to end up with serious adverse reactions. And so when we start to talk about clinical practice of herbs, we don't live in fear around the medications, we're cautious around the medications. And we start a little slow of, if we're going to say like, hey, you want to work with your doctor of dosing off of your blood pressure medication, you start monitoring your blood pressure every day. You start making the lifestyle changes that are necessary, still monitoring. We can add a low dose of herbs in there to also start to help control the blood pressure. And then you're working with your doctor to slowly taper down off of those medications, all the while checking your blood pressure. That's the safe, responsible way to go through that process. And so we're a piece of that puzzle. But if they're not checking their blood pressure, if they're just throwing their medications in the trash, that's going to potentially be a serious adverse reaction, because herbs, sometimes they work fast, sometimes they don't. What I find though is they're like, oh, I Googled hawthorn's good for blood pressure, and they just stop their medications, and then they don't even monitor it, and 6 months later they're having some serious health issues because of that. So really important that we move slowly and carefully, and we're monitoring those things that we can monitor. Hey, Kristen. I see a bunch of people just jumped on. If anybody's just joined us, feel free to put your questions in the chat. And I'm sorry, the last part of your question got cut off. How does Chinese medicine view pee? As in urine? I'm not sure what you're asking. I don't know if there's 2 more E's following that one. There we go. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just having way too much fun. Boy, there's the question of the week. So I'm going to say I'm super excited because a lot of what you just asked I'm going to be lecturing. I'm going to be at the Medicines of the Earth conference in, I think it's at the end of May, up in Black Mountain. And if you've ever been up to the Medicines of the Earth, just always a great conference. Uh-oh, I got to get my paper and a pen now. I see people throwing some questions at me. I got to write them down fast enough. I just missed somebody's. Christina, let me see what you got here. Friend that has invasive lobular carcinoma. Oops, and it just tried to run away from me. Let me get that again. Breast cancer. In the nodes. Just had surgery, is now started chemo. Surgery, chemo. I made a dual decoction of. Okay. All right, Christine, I'll come back to you. Kristen just asked me a whole slew of stuff here for me to babble on about for a minute. Medicine Zero. If you've never been there, it's a beautiful location. Of course, was it a year and a half ago or whatever? Black Mountain was decimated by the hurricanes that hit up there as well as here, obviously. And so the last few years, last year and a half, they haven't had the conference in this wonderful location. Hey, Laura. It's literally been one of my favorite locations to go to a conference, mostly just to go hiking and so forth, but always great teachers as well. So this will be my first year teaching there, and I'm super excited about it. And they chose I'm teaching two classes up there. One is actually on hypermobility. And as you pointed out, like the POTS, the MCAS is all part of that hypermobility, connective tissue, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It is all part of I personally think, a highly underdiagnosed complex of things. So I'm going to be talking about that. And the other one is hidden food sensitivities. And something around the same time I got fired up about hypermobility, I got fired up about things like foods high in latex, and that people know about latex sensitivity, but they don't know about that. So I looked for a couple of other lesser known, everybody knows about gluten and dairy and things like that, and the 9 primary allergens that Western medicine recognizes. So we'll do a little bit deeper dive in things like nightshades and so forth in the 2 classes. And then I think I'm doing a panel discussion. I'm not sure who I'm talking with yet on that, talking about herbs and aging, I think. So it was like, fine, they think I'm ancient. So, well, there you go. Score. So I'm going to ruin your day, Kristen. Google foods high in latex, and they're going to be what the rest of us would consider a healthy food, but like avocados are really high in latex. And so they're really good for you, but not for you. Only for me. Sorry. What I usually say, there's way too many foods on that list. Choose the top 10 out of that list and eliminate those. You're going to find some of your other issues might improve as well. There is a growing, hey Ronnie, there's a growing list of information on all of those. So Chinese medicine, how do we see those things? It's funny. The hypermobility, and I find that easier than saying the EDS, and kind of makes sense. It would depend on the tissue, kind of like when we see hypermobility, and it's like, I always make fun, and I shouldn't, but it's for folks who are a little bit bendier than others. So like pretty much your elbow should stop at 180 degrees, and some people, their elbows another 15 or 20 degrees sometimes. Folks who can do interesting things like my thumb should not be able to touch my arm. Other people's can bend their fingers backwards that way. Some folks have stretchy skin. Some people have stretchy veins and arteries. Some tendons. So there's lots of different versions of hypermobility, and most people have one or more tissues that are more pronounced than others. And so our explanation of it would change based on the tissue, but as a general rule, when something is lax, not holding things together, we would see that as a qi deficiency, and it could even progress into a yang deficiency. So qi deficiency is usually in that hypermobile range. We tend to see other things layered onto that. So if we saw POTS, the positional orthostatic, whatever the heck it stands for. Yeah. Let me come back to that, Kristen, because that does happen. So we see a lot of times when the veins and arteries, and I would say in a lot of people with hypermobility, they don't even know that their veins or an artery are kind of lax or a little stretchy. They get a lot of blood that leaks out, and so there's frequently borderline Chinese medicine, we would say blood deficiency, but it would be borderline anemia for other folks, but that can also lead to fibromyalgia-like symptoms. The stress of, or when we start to look at POTS, where the unregulated, hola, sorry, there's going to be people popping back and forth through here because A, it's pouring down rain. We moved the trade blanket inside because I'm multitasking. And so we're going to have a parade of people coming through for trade blanket. Yeah, right. I don't know if anybody else does. But so far it's you and Anastasia. Yeah, no, Anastasia's out in the truck. Yes, and if you want tea, and don't. I was about to say, somebody else is coming. So we see the dysregulation of the blood pressure. That can be a blood deficiency, specifically a heart blood deficiency. Or it can be a qi stagnation, because when we look at things being dysregulated, those are oftentimes, want to say stuff about African herbs? Yeah, or Kana? I'll holler at you. Let me finish this one and I'll holler at you for Kana.
Okay, cool.
Because nobody can talk about it like you.
That's true.
We got that random people all over the world here. And so that qi stagnation or heart blood deficiency, either one of those can lead to that POTS kind of idea. MCAS is also special. And so I have, basically you're allergic to everything you eat, for lack of going on to the great depth of that. If anybody Googles that, they'll see lots of information. Prenatal qi, yes, technically it is a genetic condition from a medical standpoint, but I don't know whether I'd go so far as that. I mean, do we correct it? No, but I won't say it's easy to manage, but it is manageable. So, yeah, but I would say it's not even that it's weak, it's just is. So yeah, maybe it's the Jing deficiency. That just seems very extreme. You can live a long, normal, healthy life, so I don't think that really figures in so much. So the MCAS, there's usually a lot of phlegm, and that's the weak spleen qi or weak wei qi, kind of depending on how the symptoms of that show up into the mess. What I find, and the more classic, ooh, look, I can stand on my hands flat on the ground, or I'm super bendy and things like that. So everybody who's super bendy goes, I'm going to kick butt at yoga, and they all run off and become yoga gurus. That's probably the least good thing for you. So with that hypermobility stuff, something like Pilates, strength training, swimming, Tai Chi, Qigong, because we want to strengthen those muscles that stabilize your joints in particular as you go through that process. So it's really like, just because you're good at it doesn't mean you should do it. You're going to be very prone to injuries, dislocations, and all kinds of other fun stuff. So as a general rule, you're getting the short version of my lecture without all the details. I really love gotu kola for folks with that, and that is technically a Chinese herb. And I'm going to write the Chinese name. So gotu kola is Centella, Centella asiatica. Gotu kola is also the Chinese herb qi shu Howe, I think I spelt that right. And I frequently combine that with Solomon seal, especially with tendony stuff. And there are two Solomon seals in Chinese medicine. One I almost never use. I see a lot of adverse reactions to it. The one that I love is Huang Jing. There we go. Which I consider the same as the Western or North American Solomon seal, Polygonum, whatever the heck it is. I think I answered your question. I would say anybody who has hypermobility to be so careful with selecting massage therapist, acupuncturist, personal trainers, chiropractors are huge. They can seriously damage somebody if they're not used to working with hypermobility. I think honestly, Bob's personal opinion, a lot of the injuries we associate with chiropractic care is probably from undiagnosed or not understood hypermobility issues. And I just had one of our students ended up in the ER because of complications, hypermobility layered onto some other stuff with some weird symptoms, and was gaslit, as I'm sure everybody with hypermobility has been gaslit to the nth degree by the medical community, because it's not it's recognized, but it's not well understood. And so it wasn't until actually, it's so funny, they did admit her and keep her under overnight, and it was a resident the next day that actually bothered to listen to her. And it didn't solve it, but at least got the appropriate care that she should have. That's weird. My chat's doing weird stuff. Where did all my chat messages go? Aha! I see them now. So the reality is getting a clear diagnosis is helpful, or at least making sure you have a team of healthcare professionals. Finding a team that actually has a cursory understanding of hypermobility stuff. And there's a challenge to it because, yay, the internet, and so there's a lot of TikTok memes out there about hypermobility and the MCAS and the POTS, and so literally, I want to say it was while she was in the hospital, or maybe she was just making a comment of something she'd heard before, was like, the doctors roll their eyes and just go, yeah, it's POTS is the popular disease now, or EDS is the popular disease now. And the reality is like, no, people are finally, putting the word out on the street of these rarer conditions, and I'm finding out it's not that rare. More is being talked about with the hypermobility. There's degrees and subtypes of the hypermobility, and it's creating people who have just thought they were crazy. They've been given antidepressants because they're just making it up. But of course, I'd be depressed if nobody could figure it out either. Thank you. And so people are finally, as usual with chronic, less obvious disease. You got high blood pressure, the doctor can measure blood pressure. Here's your drug. And like, yay, it's fixed. Blood sugar, same thing, but when it doesn't fit into the simple box that the general practitioner can figure out, or the orthopedic can figure out, or the rheumatologist, when it doesn't fit into one of those careful little boxes, they tend to not get care and get really frustrated. Cool. There's an easy question. No, I'll come back to that one. I feel like there was a question in the middle of all of that I missed. Oh, shiza. Yay, the joy of trying to fumble through the computer here. All right. Herbs, TCM. We said that. And I will say, the other thing I find is that there is a lot of food sensitivities because the gut is frequently leaky. Okay, I think I answered all of this. All right. Simple thing, like cancer. So the type of breast cancer is what... who said that? I didn't write down your name. Nope, that's not you. Not Ronnie. There it is. Christina. There we go. Sorry. Somebody was recently diagnosed, I'm going to guess is maybe a stage 1, stage 2, probably a stage 2 breast cancer that she got diagnosed with. They may have done a mastectomy, but it could have been, they found a couple of lymph nodes and so forth. There's, even within that, they'll also look for estrogen or progesterone sensitive cancers. And so, in the case, like your question specifically, turkey tail, it could help, it won't hurt. I will say that. And that's the important thing. It won't do any harm, even if she's going through chemo. Sometimes the doctors get twitchy about any herbs. It's mushrooms. It's really hard to hurt somebody with a mushroom. My personal preference, and you're totally correct, mushroom, dual extraction, heck yeah. It's very normal to give alcohol tinctures to people. I don't love alcohol tinctures. I still do it sometimes if it's the only way to get it in them. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll give them bone broth, because if they're going through chemo, they're very likely to watch their red and white blood cells start to tank. As they go through it, because it's into the lymph nodes, they're probably going to recommend radiation afterwards. So maintaining those red and white blood cells, platelets, and so forth, as they go through the process is really important, because we want the chemo to do its job. We want them to follow through with the protocol as it was designed, as the research suggests for all of that stuff. And so if you can throw all the good stuff right into bone broth, so that, because if she's just started, it hasn't kicked her butt yet, appetite's going to start to tank. Just to get a little bit, just get a half a cup of something in her is going to be a challenge. So to make that as nutrient dense as possible, and I would say all the mushrooms, I particularly like cordyceps and reishi mushroom. There's some research to support them for a variety of different cancers. I mostly use cordyceps to support people's white blood cell count through the process, and reishi mushrooms to support the platelets and red blood cells through the process. Turkey tail we usually think of for a variety of cancers, but breast cancer in particular. As long as they can have a button mushroom, they can have those mushrooms. But just boiling the crap out of them in bone broth is usually in my case, I prefer to do it that way if they're willing. I do think even if somebody's vegan, I do watch people who end up with cancer and having to go through chemotherapy. They really struggle to maintain their vegan diet through that. It is nothing wrong with being vegan, but if you're going through chemotherapy, you probably need to start to get some meat products in there in some way in order to maintain that normal blood levels through the process. I've watched too many people really struggle, and it takes them sometimes weeks, if not months, to recover from it. Or you have to take handfuls of injections and supplements and things like that, which that's not the best way to get our nutrients. Foods is the best way to get our nutrients. Really supporting her through the chemo and the radiation, especially if you have an acupuncturist in your area, that can be really helpful for getting people through the nausea, the vomiting, with radiation, the pain and the burning. You get a lot of burns associated with that, a lot of pain. A lot of people find the chemo harder to get through than the chemo itself. Chemo's less traumatic. Depending on whether she had a total mastectomy or not, it would be important to make sure that whether she's choosing to do breast reconstruction or not, to again keep them healthy through that process of breast reconstruction. I've watched too many people. There's something called cording, where especially after they get the lymph nodes out, they do some of the breast reconstruction, they get a lot of really tightness and pain, and caught early, that can be like no big deal at all. Amazing. That's a new one, Allura. I don't think I've actually seen that one. Ox file. Inflamed liver. Okay, I'm gonna have to think on that one. So if again, it's like no no one should ever have to do battle with their doctor, but I've had just in the last few years a couple of patients specifically with breast cancer. Um, with the cording that happened, and it literally kind of looks like a rope burn, and like kind of striations usually along the bicep there. Really painful, loss of range of motion. And if it's identified fairly early, then they can go on to go to physical therapy where they specialize in that, and no long-term side effects. But ignored, and then all of a sudden scar tissue forms and they're screwed. So really, just kind of being there as a friend to watch, to help refer, to help her when you're exhausted, to be able to do battle with a doctor to try to get the care that is correct. It's hard to do when you're just trying to hold your head up. So that's one of the best things you can do is be there as their number two, as their advocate, to help them remember what the doctor says or doesn't say, so that you're like, no, where the hell is this? In that process, mushroom wise, and I'm gonna, yes, turkey tails is great. I will say thank you for actually recognizing the depth of detail of all of that question. It's really important, like when somebody chooses to do chemo, and in a case like this, it's good argument for doing the chemo. Don't try to cleanse and protect them from the chemo. Chemo, we're intentionally poisoning the body, poisoning the tumor, and you're supposed to feel like shit. And that's okay. Clean it up after the fact. It kind of goes back to, I don't know if you were online yet, that Stevie had asked about like an accurate place to look at our drug interactions, and there really isn't a great resource. But if you use really bitter herbs or really sour herbs, you're going to change the way the chemotherapy acts in the body, potentially pulling it out of the body, and negating its effect. And so if you go through that hassle, like, no, we want the chemo to kick butt. And I hate to say it, I've had more than a few clients who've come through, and they come in after they've done chemo and radiation and all that, which I wish they'd come in sooner. And they were like, ha ha ha, I didn't have any side effects of my chemo. My numbers stayed great, and I juiced through the whole process. And they were juicing before and after the chemo to cleanse their liver or whatever they wanted to say they were doing. But the reality, what they did was they basically pushed the chemo out of their body. If you're doing chemo, you should get some side effects. You should lose your appetite. You should feel like crap. If you're not doing something specific to keep your hair in, your hair should fall out. If it's not, then the chemo's not doing anything. And so I want to say in almost all of those cases, that cancer came back detectable within a few years. And so it's really scary. So support them through the process of chemo. After about 6 weeks, when they're done with the chemo, after they do their next PET scan and we find out what's going on, then you can go on aggressively and fix all the other stuff that's going on. Certainly if they have an estrogen sensitive cancer and they're put on estrogen blockers, then they're put into instant menopause. Lots of things that we can look at to help with that. Some people choose not to do it, some people do. So there's lots of pros and cons to all of that. So really helping people ask the right questions, navigate it, support them with mushrooms is always correct, and find that team approach to help navigate the next 2 years that's kind of sitting on the plate. Because the other part of cancer it's not talked about enough is the emotional. Like somebody says the C word, all of a sudden we just see, X's on our eyes that it's a death sentence. And the reality is, in the 50s and 60s, yeah, it was. The treatments are becoming less horrific. Not to say they're gentle, but they're less horrific. And cancer is a much more survivable thing. Even more advanced cancers are way more survivable than they were in the past. And I find that when combined with any number of different alternative health things, such as acupuncture, herbs, diet, really improves that even more so. And we got a good crowd on here tonight. And I'm going to jump on to the next question there. And if anybody's just joining us, feel free to throw your questions into the chat, and hopefully I will acknowledge them so that we can put them in the queue. And I forget, see, my brain's, Ravella asked about Lyme disease. Oi. That's my answer to Lyme disease. So when we talk Lyme disease, I really like Harold Bruner's book on the basics of Lyme disease. And I read it a million years ago, whatever it was. And although I don't disagree, but I didn't think it was enough information on there on the treatment of Lyme, but really understanding that Lyme is actually a complex of tick-borne diseases, that it's Lyme and Lyme co-infection is usually what we're going to talk about. So identifying what the critter is you're actually dealing with, or critters, whether it's a bacterium, whether it's a spirochete, a virus, you name it. There's oftentimes a whole party going on inside your body. Making sure that it's properly diagnosed, and the Western blot and the other mainstream insurance paid for tests are frequently not sufficient to identify it. And so the classic, oh look, there's a tick and there's this bullseye like target on, that only happens half the time. Very normally you don't even know that you had a tick bite. And now I was recently introduced to the idea of soft body ticks, that there's a really fast transmission. I haven't done a deep dive on that, so I have no opinions, but that they can do any kind of other tick-borne diseases in a very fast transmission. So good identification, so we know what we're going after, so we can look at the best targeted approach to look at it. If it is in the first, I'm going to say, few months of infection, honestly, I would do the medical treatment for that. Usually it's doxycycline for a couple of weeks. Sometimes they go longer than that. There's some people, of course, who can't do doxycycline. I honestly don't remember what the antibiotic is. It's the second line of defense. But more often than not, we have somebody who comes in and they have a chronic, poorly or undiagnosed complex set of symptoms. And we sit there and we take the time to ask them a crap ton of questions. And we're like, wow, you really like to camp, and you were up in the Northeast camping, even though Lyme disease is everywhere in the world. It's just more of it, I would say, actually from Maine to maybe North Carolina, but it's here in Florida as well. And then we have to decide, where might you have gotten that Lyme disease, and we can do the mainstream testing to see if it picks it up. But chronic Lyme disease, it usually doesn't, honestly. Every once in a while it will. Then if we're like, oh, these three particular tick-borne diseases are common in a particular area, there's fancier testing that frequently costs thousands of dollars, which is really sad, in order to properly identify the Lyme or Lyme co-infection. Once you do that, then we can either use herbs or prescription medications or a combination of the two. Neither one is 100% guarantee. I find the medications work, but because they're very strong medications for some of them, a lot of side effects. And so it's not uncommon that people can't follow that protocol, in which case then we have to use some fairly mean herbs. And I see a lot of the same faces, but I never know who all's on here. I can only see the numbers of people who are on here. We use the term energetics a lot. And so we talk about hot and cold, wet and dry, deficient, excess, tense, and lax. And so a lot of the antimicrobial things that we might use for Lyme co-infection are very cold, and they damage the digestion and give people diarrhea and weird rashes and things like that. And so finding that sweet spot between strong enough to kill the stupid things, but not so aggressive that it kills the host, that would be you or me. And so I've got a client right now who just went through like a, I don't know, maybe 2-month, 3-month, I forget which one, the bacterium that's really hard to kill, that's one of the co-infections that she probably got 15, 20 years ago. She had a lot of side effects, gone through as best she could, but she had to reduce the dosing and frequency of the medications. They got to the end. She's actually, I think, next week retesting to see, like, is it still present? And then afterwards to decide, do we try to solely go after it with the herbs? Because what they said was, well, we have a second treatment. It's way more aggressive and has more harm, more side effects associated with it. She already couldn't handle the side effects of the more gentle approach. So my guess is she's going to choose not to do the more aggressive treatment because of the horrible side effects. And we'll probably take an aggressive herbal approach. She's been a client of mine for a number of years. And so I know she's a trooper about bitter, crappy tasting stuff. So that's really nice. There's two ways then that you approach it. One is do everything in our power to kill it, which may or may not work. And nobody likes to hear that, but there's Epstein-Barr virus. You're not going to eliminate Epstein-Barr virus. It's in like 80 or 90% of the population, and it's managed. You manage it through a healthy immune system, throw in a few antivirals, and Epstein-Barr is pretty well managed. So Lyme co-infection, sometimes we're just managing it. Sometimes we can actually try to kick its butt and remove it from the body. So when we use really strong antimicrobial herbs, we're likely to cause diarrhea, rashes, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, potentially liver damage. Can't do it if you're pregnant, can't do it if your liver's already compromised. We have to be careful with other prescription medications if we're using these really strong, cold, bitter herbs. And so it can be challenging, without a doubt. That can be super challenging to do. Taste alone is the challenging aspect of it. So the other approach is to look at a management rather than obliteration of it. That becomes more focused on balancing the human out, improving the functionality of their immune system so that they can keep the little booger in check. What I find is Lyme disease frequently goes after the weak spot in your body. If you've always had a weak digestion, it's going to screw with your digestion. You have an old injury in your leg, that leg will get 10 times worse. You're going to be diagnosed with some sort of arthritis because the Lyme disease sets up camp in there. You get migraines, well, it's going to set up camp in your migraines and cause them to be worse and more frequent. I don't have a single ooh, this herb works great for it. Things that I frequently will look at from a vitamin mineral standpoint, I'll frequently look at L-lysine, the amino acid, especially when it's a virus related to spirochete, which Lyme disease is, because it slows viral replication. So everybody knows lysine for herpes, but it works for a variety of viruses. So I don't have HSV, but it's I take lysine every single day. I'll probably start doubling up because half my office is sick right now. I take it specifically to prevent viruses from camping out in my body. And it also works on collagen, so I'll be pretty forever. I like vitamin C. I like astragalus, Huang Qi in Chinese, as ways to maintain a healthy immune system. And vitamin D. And so it's not that everybody needs vitamin D. They probably do. But even here in Florida, when we test people's vitamin D, it's painfully low. So I say for a healthy immune system, your vitamin D levels should be above 50. The role of B12, lots of other things, but B12 in particular, in the citric acid cycle and healthy repair and energy of the body. I also have people test their B12 levels. And if needed, if we're like, man, you're showing all the signs of B12 deficiency, but your numbers are fine, also to check the MMA, which is the methyl, I'm going to spell this wrong, malonic acid level. That's the byproduct of effectively utilized B12. So people who have difficulty methylating their B12 or processing their B12, they will not have a successful byproduct of the MMA. It's an additional test. Sometimes the doctors will order it. You can always order it on your own. Pay for it out of pocket. I think it's like $50 to do the MMA, but don't quote me on that. Blah, blah, blah. From an herbal standpoint, it's funny. I really like a lot of lots of herbalists talk about it. I really like following David Winston, and he's unfortunately had to deal with Lyme disease a lot, living in New Jersey, both for himself and lots of his clients over the years. And a lot of the things that he looks at and other herbalists look at, because Lyme disease specifically, not the co-infections, but Lyme disease specifically, is not a virus, not a bacterium. It's a spirochete, which, and this always sounds bad, syphilis is also a spirochete. So they frequently look back at like the 16, 17, 1800s before we had antibiotics, and they look at the cultures that, what herbs they used as anti-syphilitics. And so then they see if those can positively affect the Lyme disease. But for me, it's like not every antisyphilitic is the same. They all have unique properties, cold, dry, wet on their own. So I choose the herbs based on the pattern, the overall pattern of the human. I tend to use Chinese herbs and mix in my Western herbs. So yay, the astragalus we talked about. One of the common ones that is oftentimes talked about, and I usually find a way to fit it in there, is teasel root. This is Chu Duan in Chinese medicine. It's funny that a lot of these are also Chinese herbs. One that's local here is Smilax. And I'm going to just say Sp. Smilax is the Greenbrier Smilax, is also a Chinese herb. It is, there we go, Tufu Ling. And it's nice because it's native here to Florida. It grows actually throughout everywhere, tropics, whole Northeast. I don't know about other places. But I can use this as a granule, a tincture, have people go pick it themselves for cost savings and things like that. So there's lots of options with all of that. What else do I like? Oh, I can't forget Biden's alba. And I would say any of the Biden species are fine. This is also a Chinese herb, Xin Feng Sao. Has some good research on chronic Lyme disease. We said astragalus. I'm going to say angelica. And the only reason I say it, I don't give you a species, is there are both Western and Chinese angelicas. There's 4 different Chinese angelicas, and they all kind of have different functions. They're all warming and aromatic, so it's better for a phlegmy kind of presentation. And frequently, like Bai Ji guides to the head or to the nose, Du Ho guides to the lower back. So based on how and where your Lyme disease is showing up, I might choose one of the angelicas over another. Bang Huai is more if you're showing up as anemic because of it, so it might be attacking the digestive system in some way. I also like, what is the, oh, it's poor. If we lose power here all of a sudden, you'll know why. There's a belly washer out there. Oh, what's the fishy smell? Fish mint. Nope, can't think of the Chinese name. Hotonia. Somebody wants to. I spelled it close. Fish mint is Yuxing Sao. There we go. Sorry, the Chinese name is Yuxing. It was in my brain somewhere. Sao is a great. It's funny. It's a vegetable, so literally people cook with it like spinach, and it is a very strong antimicrobial for virus and bacteria. And the other one is Viola versicolor, which is, what's my favorite one? Si Hua Di Ding. I think I spelled that right. So, wild violet. The Chinese use the roots more than the leaves. Western herbalists use the leaves and flowers more. So, all of a plant can be used. One other one that I sometimes use is Sita. And I'm going to just say Sita spa. Any species of Sita will work. This is the Ayurvedic herb Bala. There we go. Healthy diet is obviously important as well. Let's see it. All right, we got you. Allure, I got you. Lyme disease, I got you. All right. Herbs for onset of Alzheimer's. Ugh. Sure, you're killing me with these. All right, let me see. Okay, I got Lyme disease, piece of cake. Cancer, no problem. All right, Laura, you got a weird one. So, something she said is really important. Like, it's very normal, and hopefully I gave you some direction in your quest for dealing with Lyme disease. At least get you pointed in the right direction. I would say for everybody who's working with clients, there's a lot of information online, but I really like Bruner's book. It's a small book, it's like 150 pages or so. Really dense information. I'm sure there's some new information since then, but as a basic primer to just kind of get to know a little bit about the science and the anatomy, physiology, pathology of how the booger attacks the body, I think is really helpful. A lot of the languaging around Lyme disease. So, Melora's question was about ox bile. And you're like, whoa, that sounds weird. Yes and no. So very normal in this day and age. We all like fried food and extra fat and all that kind of stuff. And so rancid fats, fried foods, overconsumption of those tends to cause our gallbladders to crap out on us. And when you get cholestasis, inflamed or enlarged gallbladder, when you get gallstones, honestly, by the time you get the most severe symptoms, it's really hard to save the gallbladder. So very normal to have them remove your gallbladder. And you can do okay without a gallbladder. Gallbladder is a storage organ for the bile, which is produced in the liver. And so, yay, here goes our liver squirting out some, and then it goes into this reservoir, which is our gallbladder. And it prepares us for fried cheese and pizza. And so as we eat these fats, our gallbladder squirts out some of the bile, and it helps emulsifier break down those fats so that we can digest them better. Things that we look for that says, oh, you're going to lose your gallbladder if you don't change your ways and eat a vegetable, are things like white or gray clay-like stools. That's usually the warning track. That's like, you maybe need to stop the fried foods. If it gets to the point where you get a referred pain, frequently a stabbing, cramping pain in the shoulder blade, or vomiting, diarrhea with like an oil slick, floaty poop that's kind of like slimy or floaty. If you're vomiting green bile or phlegm, and you notice it's after you do fondue, your gallbladder may be past saving. We'll sometimes see elevated liver enzymes, so ALT, the GGT, I forget whether the AST relates to that or not, but probably. All of those can be indicative of an inflamed gallbladder or liver, because usually we call it liver enzymes, so we get worried when we see those, like, what's going on? So it means that we should do more research, get an ultrasound, see what's going on, more extensive testing. So, yay, they throw it out. What they failed to tell you is once they take it, now you can never eat those yummy fried things again. So I was like, modify it sooner so you can get away with the occasional piece of fried cheese or shrimp or something. So a lot of the folks who got their gallbladder got in trouble and they've lost it, they're not educated well enough by their doctors to modify their fat intake. Because even the healthy fats still need bile secretions in order to break those fats down. So even an avocado, really good for you, requires bile. So I usually educate people like, choose your fats carefully, make sure that they're healthy fats like an avocado, and then eat smaller amounts throughout the day. And in a perfect world, warn your gallbladder or warn your liver that there's some stuff coming. So eating bitter foods or taking digestive bitters prior to can help the liver start to stimulate some bile. The other thing is eating your fats at around the same time every day. Your body does get in a rhythm, and so it can anticipate things like that. Oh, there's some fat coming. Let's go ahead and start warming up the bile producers here, a few minutes before it shows up in the stomach. So for those who are like, screw that, I just want fried cheese, just teasing. Ox bile is a common addition into some digestive bitters or digestive enzymes. So we find it in some of our HCl supplements. Like, this is formulated with enzymes, betaine HCl, and I just assume there's ox bile. Oh, actually. So if it's vegan, it won't have ox bile. So there are some of your digestive enzymes, if they're vegan, are going to be lacking the ox bile, and I don't know of a vegetable equivalent. There's a lot of cool digestive enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, things like that can be used, but they don't quite meet the bill. Is it safe? So let me get to your actual question. Contraindications of taking ox bile is an inflamed liver. The liver lesions is actually the concern. So, like, there are many reasons why the liver gets in a fatty liver, and so I'm going to say, I don't know, and somebody feel free to chime in and correct me on this. I don't know of a contraindication with the ox bile itself, because the ox bile is going to the stomach, and it shouldn't be stimulating the liver to produce the bile. So I could see, I'm sure we could come up with a reason, like if the bile ducts were blocked on the liver, if we put a lot of bitters in to stimulate it, that it could cause some problems. But I don't know of a contraindication with the ox bile with those issues. So, and if anybody's wondering what that is, sorry, I was sitting here saying fatty liver. The NAFLD is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. There we go. You also have alcoholic fatty liver disease, but we're seeing more and more of the I don't drink too much or at all that people end up with fatty liver. It's just classically associated with that. So I would say you should be fine. If it causes right-sided pain to take the ox bile, I would stop. So, like, I could see a digestive bitter potentially causing pain if some of those lesions were blocking a bile duct. I could see it causing pain and kind of backing up the system, in which case, don't do that. And it's one of those tough things because fat's good for you, not fried fat. Like we need that avocado, we need those fish oils, we need all of that stuff. And so really talking to people about the dosing and timing of all of that. Yeah, that's all I got on that. Well, I know they're in there stalling because I think the rain and thunderstorm is keeping everybody away. And I still got Alzheimer's coming up. I'm going to do a station identification for all of you brave souls who are staying on here. Hey, if you just get on here, I'm Bob Linde, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Alex, if you want to talk about Kana or something, or how cool Africa is. But I'm Bob Linde from Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies, the Tradition School of Herbal Studies, and Tradition's Tea, Tonics, and Coffee. That the clinic is here at acuherbals.com. And oh yeah, you got some. And we're here 6 days a week, 9 to 5, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. We've also got a full apothecary. You can come in and say, hey, I want $1 worth of chamomile. Tradition School of Herbal Studies, Western and Chinese, and just beginners. And you can find out more at traditionsherbschool.com. And we've also got student clinics, so 3 nights a week. Monday nights is acupuncture student intern, supervised by moi. Tuesday night is Western student clinic, and Wednesday night is the Chinese herbal students. All of them supervised. It's a way to get good quality alternative care, looking at the right herbs, diet, supplements, and so forth. And they're supervised by experienced practitioners like me. And the tea truck's there Thursday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And on Friday nights, we try to always do something like this. Next week is the Full Moon Market and Drum Circle, which is open to everybody. It's free. And if you weren't afraid of melting, if you all weren't so sweet like sugar and melting in the rain, you'd be here at the Trade Blanket, which we do once a month, courtesy of this gentleman.
Tom, is it not also the largest apothecary in Florida?
I'm going to claim it. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea.
It may be.
You
see this wall of jars? There are more walls of jars. Look at all these things.
And then there's all the stuff that we can't fit on the
And
shelf.
you can't even put it all in the jars. These are the display herbs, including this one.
Kana.
I don't know how you can read that, but that says Kana.
Wait, who the hell are you?
Oh, who am I? My name's Alexander Howe. They call me the Bush Ninja. I've got myself as a business is Bush Ninja Botanicals, and I have recently branched in the last few years, plant pun intended, into the world of a particular South African plant. I've lived and traveled Southern Africa since 2011. I've got about 8 years boots on the ground, coming and going. 2.5 years was my longest chapter before I came home in between. But, I come and I go, and I still come and go every year. And, post the 2020 situation, when I was able to leave the country again, I decided that I had known about this plant, Kana, and I've been working with it for over 10 years at that point. It's very well known in South Africa, and I do want to qualify my experiences in Southern Africa. It is a large continent. And
there's more than one country?
Yeah, it's big. It's big. And the southern tip of Africa has an incredible, unique level of biodiversity. In fact, there's a whole floral kingdom that only exists in the southern tip of Africa called the Cape Floral Kingdom. And so the medicine there is not only incredibly diverse and unique, but it's also medicine that humanity kind of co-evolved around. The cradle of humankind. When I first went to South Africa and lived on this mountain for 11 months with a friend and teacher, we were 45 minutes from the cradle of humankind World Heritage Site. And so that mountain was just as much part of that range in the Magaliesberg Mountains, and so we found stone circles that were ancient house foundations, that were hut foundations and everything. They're just on the mountain. It could have been tens of thousands of years old. And so the medicine there and the tradition there is really fascinating. I have talked for Bob for too long, and we've got to cut me off about all the plants. I was like, let's just talk about a whole pharmacopoeia that, is in and of itself an infinitely long path, just like each of the branches and facets and modalities of herbalism are infinitely long paths that you could walk your entire life. So I've just been making a few steps of experience along the way. And one of the plants that I'm most excited about, so much so that I created another company to specialize in it, is kana. And so this is what it looks like. It's a succulent. This is it's shredded, but it's a succulent herb that grows in the Karoo Desert, in the semi-arid desert of South Africa, and it's a serotonin. Oh yeah. One of its common names is koikut, which translates to stuff that is chewed. It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, mood and mind-altering plant used by the indigenous people of South Africa since the dawn of humanity in their most sacred healing rituals, which were dances. This is the original dancing medicine. And so what kana does is it's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. To simplify, it retains your serotonin in your brain. And so it has 3 pillars where it's really useful. It has numerous other effects and traditional uses, but the 3 big ones, especially for our day and age, are for depression. It's an antidepressant that is safe and has an ancient history of use in massive quantities, because in ritual level doses they would chew through an entire lot of it all through the night. And
like one person might chew that whole bottle?
Probably even more. Yeah, it's like they're just chewing it all night long while they're clapping and dancing. And it's really not the kana that's making you high in any way. It's your own naturally released serotonin. And so you're dancing, the dancing is actually the original medicine. We know, and science is coming along to prove what our ancestors know, that the dance is the medicine. And so both for physical healing and emotional and mental health, the dancing was really, they've shown that dancing is more effective than antidepressants, it's more effective than all these other things that and strategies that one can use. Is just go have a dance break. And so this is the first ally that affected the dance. And so as the people were dancing, they would have it in a ritual level dose, which even I have not gone that far, because it's a very intentional thing. And even though I have visited indigenous communities in South Africa, I haven't actually had an opportunity to do the healing dance, or the trance dance.
And I would say, if anybody has a question about kana, feel free to put it on the chat, and then we'll pick up here in a few minutes.
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to pop it in there. Bob will pay attention to that.
My eyes are getting a little altered.
I can't pay attention to that while I'm talking.
I got it.
So it's a good question, though. Is kana psychedelic? No. It's not psychedelic. There's no hallucination effect. It is a psychoactive. And so
that's an important distinction.
It's an important distinction.
Yeah.
And also an important note is it's completely legal. and
I can still operate heavy machinery.
Right, and I can sell it online. and
how would I find it online?
You could find it at mamakana.com. Or if you come to Traditions, he's got a jar of it, because I'm actually pretty much out.
Yes, he is the supplier for us.
We have a question in the back.
How similar is it to taking 5-HTP?
So the question is, how similar is it to taking 5-HTP? It's a great question. They're completely different. Because 5-HTP helps with serotonin production in the brain. And so it's a precursor to the serotonin that's being produced mostly by your gut. Kana is not affecting the production of it, it's affecting it post-release. And so, but the synergy is there. If you should happen, because we do live in a world where I go to work at festivals and other settings, if someone should take a compound that would make them dump all of their serotonin and then potentially be depleted of their serotonin the next day, both 5-HTP and kana are differently good and synergistic with the production of serotonin from the 5-HTP and the recapture of the depleted serotonin. And so in that case, there's a good synergy. And if you were also treating your own depression, which, I have my life of up and downs and things, they would both be a synergy of effect that would, differently good but helping in the same system. The only contraindications for kana would be antidepressants, because we avoid mixing plants and pills that do similar things. And then illegal compounds like the one I referred to, because again, it's kind of doing a similar thing. One is causing a dump and the other is causing a retaining, and so we want to avoid stacking functions like that because it's unpredictable.
And I always describe that in that, it's funny, I have very little experience with kana. I've played with it really just with you. And I always think of it as minerally. And I don't...
Very salty.
Yeah, that minerally saltiness there's so few herbs that I can say, ooh, that feels like I just put a pinch of salt in my mouth.
Yeah.
And so there's I was thinking just because I associate salt with cold, and I'm like, that was actually a larger dose than I've ever done before, and I'm Mr. Hypersensitivity when it comes to herbs. Yeah, right. Where's the dance party?
We need to trade blanket. We're having a dance party.
But it's like
on a DJing.
Sure.
It's just me and Bob on the dance floor.
Wouldn't be the first time. But it's like, I'm shocked at how warm it feels. Like, I'm feeling a warmth in my body that shocked me, actually.
Okay.
I'm just like, and not uncomfortable. It's almost like I was drinking a ginger tea. And I'm actually feeling it down in the belly, and it's coming up in warmth in my face.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. It feels very nice.
And so what we're doing right now is the most traditional way to work with it.
Always the best
Is
way.
to have it in your mouth and kind of chew on it and hold it in your mouth. Now, one pinch, very subtle. This is still just like a gentle plant situation. Even the extract forms, when you take some, it's salty, right? Yeah, one of the nice things, if you worked with the other more popular mood and mind altering plants that are legal, like kava and kratom, it tastes a lot better. I would not want to do that with kratom.
I'm not making funny faces with this one at all.
Yeah, it's quite pleasant, actually. And so the people would chew on it, and they would dance, but they would also use it during their hunts to help slap their thirst and to give them energy. It's not really a stimulant, but if you're doing something like endurance hunting, which is what humans evolved as the king of the hunters, as it were, is because they could run a thing down after, like, the Bushmen are very, the indigenous, the San and the Khoikhoi people are very small statured people, and they have these little bows, and they shoot their little arrows that have arrow poison on them, and often they're cardiac glycosides and things like that, so they have to, like, the arrow poison has to do its work, and you're talking a kudu that's like hundreds of pounds, many hundreds of pounds.
Deer-side critter.
Yeah, it's like way bigger than a deer. It's that one with the curly horns, or an eland.
Alora says hi, and some Kathy asks,
Hi,
can you
Alora.
tincture it?
Can you tincture it? Yes, you can tincture it. Tincture's great. It is the alkaloids are water soluble, so it also makes a nice tea. And what I often tell people is the best way to work with a plant is the way you're going to work with the plant. You know, that's the way to do it. So if you're someone who, you know, is likely to put plants in their mouth, which I find most of the populace is not, but maybe the people on this call,
true.
you know, happy to put plants in their mouth and just kind of hold it in there and chew it. That is a great way to work with it. But, you know, if you're someone who, so traditionally it was chewed, it was brewed into a drink, it was smoked as like the traditional chillum pipe, and it was inhaled as a snuff, powdered and inhaled as a snuff. And so we make an extract, or really the laboratory makes an extract where I get it from. You can also do an ethanolic extraction and do like a crude, you know, you evaporate the ethanol and you'll end up with this paste, and that is a concentrate of the kana. And so we have our lab that produces a powdered water-soluble extract, and it brings me to the second pillar. So the first one was depression and anxiety, and that's really helpful in small doses. I've had experiences, secondhand experiences, where some people who are clinically depressed just aren't producing or retaining the serotonin that they need, and single doses, while there's like the now effect, and then there's like the next day. And I have a story where a friend of mine, you know, I'd come to visit, I'd get shared a dose of I make a honey elixir. That's my preferred way of working with it sublingually. And I gave them my friends one to have. It's not going to make anybody high. It's called Mama Kana because it's safe for moms and babies. Oh, and they would give it to babies in breast milk for colic. It was another traditional use of like the ancillary, not really the three pillars kind of use. But it just goes to show how safe it is and its you know, history of safe use. And so my friend, you know, she struggles all the time. She just has a daily struggle. She wasn't in a place where she was particularly in a triggered state or having something that was making her sad, but every day is a day. And so she'd have the dose. You know, it's gentle, it's subtle. You don't get high on it, kind of thing, like you would if you had like a hit of cannabis or something. The next day, she calls me up like a little while later to tell me about this. The next day, she woke up, got out of bed, cleansed her body, got dressed, tidied up the house, started washing dishes, and then she started whistling. And she's like, wait a minute, I'm having a really good day. And for her, like, a normal day is a really good day. And so that just goes to show that, like, a single dose can really help people who are struggling. And when I'm feeling a little blue or having something that I am having struggle and challenge around, single doses, tonic level doses, 1 to 3 doses per day, can really, like, shift you just a few degrees. And and Bob's a sailor, he was just sailing the other day, a few degrees now can really change where you end up at the end of the day. And so I find it to be incredibly helpful without being mind altering. So it's like, sometimes, I'll work with cannabis and it'll help shift my mood, and I'll feel it could be good medicine for me in that way. But I'm high now, and I don't always want to be high now. Couldn't do this call if I was high right now. Not articulate, but I get high like that. And so Kana is this incredible ally for depression and anxiety. And so the other thing, because it's retaining that serotonin, it's anti-addictive. And so it has a long history of use.
So it's not working on dopamine.
It actually, we oversimplify it as a serotonin story, but it is working on dopamine.
Okay.
It is. And it's also a PDE4 liver pathway, phosphodiesterase liver pathway inhibitor. So it has cognitive boosting functions too. And different brains react differently. ADHD brains find it to be incredibly helpful for focus without having to be a stimulant like an amphetamine. So I've offered my honey elixir to my friends who are super ADHD, and they've like, wow, I can focus, and again, without the stimulant, speediness of it all.
It's funny, I wonder how that would pair with Bacopa, which is kind of the same thing, where it's that focused relaxation.
Right.
One of the best things I know of for ADHD.
It would probably synergize.
It would probably do a really nice combo, except Bacopa does taste like crap.
Well, maybe this would cut
right.
the crap. And so it's very interesting because it's a bit of an adaptogen in terms of how you work with it, and what you're doing at the time you're working with it affects how it affects you. So if you're taking it at the beginning of an evening and you're going out dancing and you dose repeatedly, for me, I have a dose every like 30 to 45 minutes while having fun, then you're going to get this cumulative serotonin and dopamine retention that gives a gentle but genuine euphoria that can build into a true euphoria of a serotonin high. I don't love the English common name. So Kana is its indigenous name. The English common name is Bushman's ecstasy. Because the indigenous people would dance through the night chewing it and have this heightened state of transformational and ecstatic healing. And so, but when you're addicted to something, whether it be a behavior or a substance, you are chasing this dopamine and serotonin release, and as the addiction forms, you release less per dose. And so you're able to retain what you release, and thus it helps pull the hooks out of the addiction, and you're not as likely to feel like you have to chase the dragon, is what they say. It's like trying to get that high. And the classic and very well-studied example is with alcoholism. And so, you start drinking, and not only are your inhibitions lowered, but you're like, and you just want to have the next one. You're craving the next one, and when is enough enough? It's hard for people who struggle in that way. And I have another case study. A guy where I stay, he drinks every day, and it was funny because we were talking to him very frankly. And I was like, "Oh, you're an alcoholic, no judgment." And he's like, "No, I only drink between the hours of like 7 and 10 every day. I have like these boundaries." and he came down after he'd purchased one of my honey elixir bottles, and he's like, "Dude, I got to talk to you. I had, every day he walks the dog and he has a tumbler filled with a mixed drink, and he didn't have it that day." And he's like, "I had a glass of wine with dinner. I had some of your honey elixir with the Kana in it. And I drink to feel a certain feeling. And when I feel that way, I feel like I've had enough. I felt the feeling. I didn't make a drink." He was walking the dog and he wasn't drinking.
Are there studies on that?
Yeah. The alcoholism is the most well-studied. And in fact, another of its names translates to our dry liquor. And so one of my herbalism books, at the end of the chapter, it says maybe in the future people will show up with a packet of Kana instead of a bottle of wine.
Right.
But it's interesting because when you take the extract powder and you sniff it, insufflate, for those who like fancy words.
What
Then,
the snuffleupagus
yeah,
does.
right. He had the schnoz to snuff. One, you're gonna feel it. That's how you're gonna feel it, and it is kind of like the drug version of prana in that it's an extracted, isolated compound, alkaloidal compound that you can imbibe in this way, and you're gonna feel you're gonna feel it. It's a little bit of like a bell curve of a come up where you get this warm, glowy, relaxed body feeling, and then it peaks, and in about half an hour you're back down, and maybe a little elevated from there because it has a residual tail. There's no come down, there's no crash, there's no depletion, there's no hangover, and so that kind of plays towards that English common name. But the fascinating thing is when you use it, when people who are addicted to other sniffable things, much of the addiction, like many addictions, is the addiction to the ritual. It's the smoke break. Not only is it the smoke and the nicotine, for example, of a cigarette, it's the going outside and having a smoke break. And in today's very grindy culture, you can't just say, hey, boss, I want to go outside and breathe for 5 minutes and just do some breath work, outside.
I was in the military with a guy who would do that.
Really?
Like,
Did they let him do it? He would have breath breaks?
He was like, go ahead and do something about it. Yeah, good out there.
Right. So there you go. That's the example that proves the rule, or exception that proves the rule. But most of the time, that's why, like, I have friends in service industries, waiters and cooks and stuff, and they get addicted to cigarettes because it's the break that they can get, because they're allowed to have their addiction and they're allowed to have that break. And so one of the reasons I pulled the trigger on this company was two different friends told me almost the identical story, independent of each other. One of them was a festival photographer, and him and his friends, he's in the DJ booth. It's like really intense, heavy trance, EDM type music, boof, boof, boof. And they would take a break from the party, go to the van, prepare a sacrament that they would share, and the whole container of the intimacy of preparing the sacrament, of imbibing the sacrament together, like that was part of the ritual and the break, the smoke break in the party, and then they'd go back out into the party and they had an effect. Now, you could do that if you wanted to sniff chalk or baby powder or flour, but you wouldn't have it's an option, but you wouldn't have the effect. And so Kana, because it has an effect, you do feel a euphoric rush, and it doesn't have any of the negative effects of the other compounds. That it's been incredible. So both those friends were able to kick that addiction to a South American plant extract. I don't know if I can say online.
Yeah, who knows? I get kicked off of YouTube all the time.
And they were both able to kick that addiction in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Using it as a replacement therapy. And then another friend,
That thing from Bolivia.
yeah, and was able to kick an amphetamine addiction, which I've already said once already, so I'm going to just say that, in 3 weeks. And he messaged me, and he's like, wow, this plant has changed my life, because it helps pull the hooks out.
Nice.
And so you've got antidepressant, anti-anxiety. You have an anti-addictive, any kind of addictive behavior this can be attributed to, because it's not really affecting the compound that you're addicted to. It's the dopamine and the serotonin release that it's retaining, so you're more able to say enough. And then there's the recreational dose, which when I have my honey elixir, for example, I take a squirt every half an hour, 45 minutes. And I kind of tell people the dosage is like a beer. You don't get drunk on one beer. Some people will feel a little buzz if they're a light constitution and they have an empty stomach, but most people don't. And some people are tanks and they can have a few and not feel it. And so it's a similar kind of bell curve, but for my body it takes about 4 doses in 2 hours to feel a noticeable euphoric effect where I'm like, oh, there it is. I'm a little more than happy. You've been more than happy before. A lot of us live in the South.
So weird. So, like, at least for me, I felt warmth.
Yeah.
And just like I chewed a little bit more, and this is like literally the most I've ever done of it. I'm also feeling dry. Like, and maybe it's just I'm chewing.
Well, interesting because they would use it to slack thirst. That is a traditional use while they were hunting. It would make you less thirsty and less hungry.
Yeah, because maybe it's just because it's a dry plant that I'm sticking in here. But I'm like, because it's funny, like half of what you're saying, we attribute things like kratom to that. And I find that people who are regular users of that, it's too dry. like for folks who are consuming it on a regular basis, what effects, good or bad, do they see besides like, ooh, euphoria, serotonin, and all that, like digestive, poop changes one way or another, or anything?
I haven't heard of anything. Most people aren't chewing on the plant, which I think would have a physical factor.
It's good fiber.
It's great fiber. I haven't heard of anything in terms of digestion, like how kratom can like block you up a little bit, and that has to do with the opiate stuff. The one thing actually is in high doses, too much too fast, people will get a nausea and a weird,
so it's a little self-limiting from that perspective.
Yeah, it's a little self-limiting in that way. Yeah. And some people, like if they take like a bump of the pure extract, they'll have to go to the bathroom. You know, that's something that's happened.
It'll cause diarrhea.
Not like diarrhea. It's just like when some people have a cigarette or some people have a cup of coffee, and it just makes the body moves the bowels along. And so that's funny because my one friend who works with a lot of various extracts, he's like, oh yeah, that's a drug, because it made me have to go poop.
So it's funny, like we hear about things like cacao is heart opening, and some of what you're saying, I'm thinking of it as very heart opening, and like that joy, the dance, and all of that.
It helps people be a little more outgoing. I find folks who are a little like introverted have come back to me, and they like, it helped me be in a social setting and be chatty and talkative. And one person asked me, she's like, I'm going to this party and I really don't want to go, but I have to go for whatever reason. Is this going to help me have a better time? And I was like, yeah, actually, it's very likely going to help you have a better time.
And not the hangover of a couple of drinks.
Right, and then no hangover and no depletion afterwards. So.
It's funny, so turn it back into energetics, the salty flavor for us in kidney and some other cultures is, or the salty flavor associated with the kidney, and more the energetic kidney, where we look at things like willpower, and we associate fear and fright as the negative. So sometimes strength, the will to do things, and so like that ability to be more outgoing, things would almost cross over into that. Is there use of it, any traditional use of it for lumpy things or cancers or anything like that? Because we do see salty, sometimes we say it softens hardness. And so it would be interesting to see if there was a
I think it would
goiters or anything
soften
like that.
Energetic heart hardness. And another interesting thing is that it plays really well with others. Plays very well with
other
cacao. You know, because so where I was going with the adaptogenic quality of how it affects you, if you take it, like I said, early in the evening and you're dancing and you repeat dose, it's going to energize you without being like a stimulant, but you're going to get that euphoric build. If you take it at the end of the night, people use it for insomnia.
Interesting.
And so it can help relax you, calm the monkey mind, relax the body, and it's one of its historical uses was for insomnia. And so that's really interesting because I read it as at the end of the day, you've had a long day, you've stressed out, you had all of your cortisol running all day, and this is just going to help like recapture and replenish some of that depletion, and then help you wind down and relax. So a little bit at the end of the night is very relaxing without being a sedative.
It would be interesting to see if there's a researched effect on the vagus nerve.
That would be
because I'm you know, as I consume more,
he's really in tune with his body too. So I always love hearing what he.
But I'm feeling a little bit in the back of the head, almost to the ears.
I'll feel pretty more.
And for any of you who haven't sat around with a bunch of crazy herbalists, this is what herbalists do. We sit around like we can't be an expert in everything. It's like I know what I know, but like Kana's one that I've literally taken one small pinch and listened to Alex a little bit. And this is probably the most we've ever talked about this plant, and never sat like I'm pretending all y'all online are not here, and so we're just sitting here like I'm listening, but at the same sense I was like. In my head, I'm like, well, what about? And so
that's great,
exploring that from different really perspectives. He's good, you know, his indigenous use there, but also the medical, his own research, and personal experience. But then it was like, all right, how does the energetics thing? How does other cultural constructs of this? And it's like how we create new ideas and expand on the use.
Right, and that crossover is really important because I don't have the strong energetic read background that you do, and so I'm really learning a lot from you, even just from your intuition, which is really great.
Yeah, it's like this is the fun part of it because it's like having it come from both the science end is really important as well because that can be predictive of adverse reactions. So the first
Right.
question we covered today was about our drug interactions.
Right.
So like, no,
In this
no.
case, don't mix with antidepressants.
Yeah.
Is the warning I have to put on the label.
Mhm.
So if I were
Serotonin sickness.
Yeah.
It's increasing serotonin.
That's
yeah.
the concern, and why even when I sell my little extract vial, I say do not mix with that serotonin dumping drug that you can probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I literally put that on the label because what I don't
Ecstasy
want
bad.
is some bro taking 3 hits of ecstasy. He said it, so I can say it now. and then
It's
like
educational.
eating the whole vial and then getting serotonin syndrome because
Yeah.
you're dumping and retaining at the same time. And so it's very, very unlikely, but it's a non-zero, possibility that there could be some negative interaction. So of course, always start small, test for yourself, feel your body. Everybody's different. That said, even after years of use, there is no hook or habitual attachment to it. And that's
really cool.
very, very well studied because this plant has been in the African pharmacopoeia forever.
Yeah.
And it was traded back in the Dutch East India Company days. It was one of those popular things that weaned off, and it weaned off because it's not that strong, and then we had ecstasy.
Yeah, if you don't get high enough off of it, it's not going to be
Right,
as popular.
and that's
as
why I
something
tell
else,
people,
yeah.
if it was as strong as weed, you would have heard about it
Yeah.
already.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
funny.
and it would have been made illegal, but it's not. And luckily, we recently, 2020-ish era, we had an FDA approval.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
Of a trademarked version of the extract called
Wow.
Zembrin.
Wow.
And so that barrier fell in a
Yeah,
big
that's
way.
that's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and I appreciate what the FDA does.
Yeah.
I like, especially when they're funded, the work that they're out there to do,
Yeah.
and they're trying to keep people safe, and that's
Yeah.
important work. And so when they do the rigorous studies and human trials, because that has a lot of steps to get through, a lot of different phases of trial to get to be given a kosher stamp. It hasn't, there was a rumor for a long time in my travels that it was grass, generally recognized as safe, but we've looked for that designation and can't find it, so it turns into rumor. But it is there, and it's safe, and it's non-addictive, and it's helpful for all these wonderful things.
So as long as I'm holding you hostage here
Yeah.
for a minute, we're stalling until we screw it. Nobody's
I'm-
coming in the ring.
Yeah,
so.
we'll see if anybody's time. We're singing in the right now.
So it's funny. I want to ask you about a different African
Okay,
herb.
great.
And so Alex has gifted me a few things over the years that he's brought
He
back.
bought them.
A few of you can.
I have given. He's
Yeah.
an incredible mentor and supporter of a young fellow trying to start an herb business. So
So the Mpepu.
Mpapu, where we got
So
it.
it's funny.
I got it.
I had a client who came in who has struggled with stuff, and he had traveled to Africa to do. The name is it's compared to ayahuasca frequently, but I can't.
Iboga.
I thank you. Yeah. So he did the iboga in Africa, and he regaled me with that tale of how that's literally brought him back from the brink of death.
Wow.
And
And for those who don't know, iboga is probably the strongest psychoactive and psychedelic plant on the planet.
and he was required to do an EKG prior to, because there were some very real risks involved with all of
And
it.
it can kill you. So don't mess around with
Yeah,
it.
that not one to do recreationally
No,
at
not
all.
regular. Not safe like Hana.
Yeah, but he had literally just was a new client and really enjoyable, talking with a very personal guy. And after chatting with him for a while, our ayahuasca vine is in bloom. So I was like, "Come on, let me go show you this." And he was buying a few herbs just for his own use, like chamomile, something really, And so I was like, and I gifted him a couple of grams of Mpepu. I was like, just burn this for smudge. And I was like, I don't even remember what all it's for, but I remember you had told me, this really shouldn't be sold, it should be gifted more than anything. And so I felt drawn to gift him for that. But remind me what it's for.
Yeah, so Mpapu, or Mpepo, I've heard it said both.
I'm going to type the name of it in there while you're chatting.
Imphepo. Helichrysum, which is, we even have Helichrysum genus plants here, I believe. Mpapu is Zulu, and it means air for the spirits. And so this is sustenance for the spirit of the ancestors. It is the most common, most sacred plant in southern Africa. I kind of I always, I'm a whole package human, and so my heritage is I was raised Jewish, and like the Sabbath, like Shabbat is the holiest day of all the holidays, but it happens 52 times a year, and it helps me to remember the beauty of all of these plants. Because when you say plant medicine to people, if you're not an herbalist, they think ayahuasca, they think iboga, they think San Pedro and mescaline-containing cacti. They're forgetting dandelion and plantain and things like these are plants that are medicine. And so I really love to talk about the everyday sacred. Those things that we should remember. Keep us going, even if they're not those powerful teacher plants. So Mpepu. Even when I meet a young person who's disconnected, they'll say, "Oh, my grandmother would burn that." It's a very distinct smell.
It's funny, there's a helichrysum that's common in Europe, especially in Germany, that has this beautiful yellow flower. We used to be able to source it. I can't find it anymore. It was also called the Tree of Life, or the Flower of Life.
Yeah, this also has a yellow flower too.
That's beautiful. Interesting. Yeah,
and it's like tomentose. It's glabrous. I love botanical words. It means it's
$5 words.
Very fuzzy, and it like clumps together. So what I'll share with people is that I just like give it some like prayer and intention. I love to call in. So it's cleansing, and science has come around and shown that it has antimicrobial properties that are retained in the smoke and in the soot. And so you would burn it in a sick room, but it's not a banishing medicine. It's not a clearing thing. It's a summoning medicine. And so
that's an important point.
It's an important point. It's nourishment to the spirit of the ancestors. And so you would go to a traditional healer. One of the titles is a Sangoma. And if you would go to a Sangoma, and she'll, hear about your situation. She might say you might go to her because you're having bad luck, just having all this bad luck, and that's a medical diagnosis. And she's like, well, have you burnt any Mpepu? Mm-hmm. Have you spoken to your ancestors? And so the thing is they don't like worship the ancestors as deities. They just recognize that the spirit of the ancestors, they're still here, and they can influence our day-to-day life. And then and they're not always entirely benevolent, especially if you're not paying any attention to them. And so your cheeky uncle could still be making, he's like, hey, pay attention to me.
And your grandma is a bit pissed if you don't call her.
Right, exactly.
Week,
and yeah, exactly. Call your grandma. And so this is how you can call your grandma, even after she's passed. So you just roll it in your hands like that, and it actually makes its own perfect smudge stick. You don't have to
we
wrap
do that
it.
with mugwort as well.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing.
Right, and you just, like the moxa, too, that, yeah, and so I always put some, gratitude and intention, and I always speak to the ancestors, my blood lineage, and the ancestors of the land where I'm sitting, and calling in all the ancestors of all the different people that are, in the room with me, and, asking for their guidance, and just thank you for everything that they did to bring you here, even the mistakes that they made, they got you here. And so, yeah, that's interesting. So here's just, and this is a neat, like, functional morphological property of the plants that you can do this.
So this is the mugwort that we do the exact same thing, and so whoa, it's still alive.
You got him.
Right.
And so this is really nice because I'll come back with a big bundle of Mpepu, but I don't have to light the whole thing. I can just break off a little piece, and then this will burn, and it won't go out. Actually, you really.
This is the mugwort I'm burning right now.
The mugwort.
And it burns just like sage smudge, actually even better than.
Let me see later. All right. So there's a word in Xhosa. Xhosa is one of the tribes. They're related to the Zulu people. They're part of the Bantu tribes. And they have a word, kamaku. Kamaku means I see you. And they'll say it like as an affirmation, but even when you're in argument, they'll say kamaku, like, I don't agree with you, but I see where you're coming from. And I see it's so good. Every step that you had to take to get here, and that your ancestors standing behind you had to take to get you here today. So even though we could be having a big fight, it actually brings back that presence of I see you, even if I don't agree with you. Like you're coming from your side, I'm coming from my side, and at least I can see.
Those are important words to hear in this day and age, right?
And so there you go. Our two
That's such
beautiful,
a
look,
beautiful sweet
it's so
smell.
neat to see the two different, slightly different colors of smoke, like
Yeah.
curling together. I don't know if you guys can actually catch that on there, but it's our treat.
Got to be here to enjoy
Yeah,
it.
beautiful. Yeah, and so in terms of medicine, you can make a tea, you can make a steam, and it's antimicrobial. It's a good wound wash, and it's good for the lungs.
I've only burned it.
Yeah, and
And I reserve it for special occasions
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It seems such a powerful, unique tool.
when I met an Inyanga, which is an herbalist title, who taught me. They were trained by they were a white person, but they were trained by indigenous people, and they taught me. I always ask when I travel. I would visit traditional healers, and one of my questions I would ask is not "Do you," but "How do you give gratitude before you take from nature?" And I had all these great responses, but this person said that they would, when they were harvesting, they would speak to the plants, specifically tell them what they were collecting the plant for. You know, and so the idea is that you're not harvesting to sell it. You're like, hey, I'm using this to help my grandmother because she has a chest cold. We could make tea or steam out of it. And then you would lick, like, your finger, and you would touch your saliva to the wound that you created on the plant as you were telling it what you were going to do. And it would tell its kin that you were a good person and that you would get better medicine for it.
I believe that.
Yeah.
It's funny, and I try to make a point to always do that. It's funny. It's like, sure, I need to harvest you to put into the shop so other people can use you for medicine. The least resistance, when the plants literally practically come out of the ground, besides making medicine for an individual, you have to say, like, it's for so-and-so, is to teach. Whenever I go out and I'm doing an herb walk and I'm teaching a class, and I was like, something like Sita is like, I need you to teach these people.
Yeah.
It literally comes out like butter.
Wow.
And it's amazing how
That's so
uniquely
cool.
teaching the plants will give their lives to teach.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a fascinating thing, without a doubt.
I love that.
All right,
Okay,
well,
cool. Okay.
I'm going to shut it down at this because I would say this is a special treat. We're going to save Alzheimer till next month. I hope you all join us for the Herbal Open Forum, and we're going to
Right. If
continue.
anybody's interested in ordering some Kana, mamakana.com.
There you go.
And if you use the code
Whoa.
thank you,
He's getting fancy now.
you'll get a gratitude discount on your order.
Sweet. All right. I hope you all come by and check out there. We were trimming all of our stuff up for spring growth, and we pulled down a crap ton of chaya. If any of you are in this area and want a free chaya cutting, come by between now and Sunday, and there's a big old pile of chaya out there. Hope I see you in some of our classes. Remember, all of our classes are both online and in person. Anybody can come by and get all the herbs. If you've got questions about the herbs, take class or come to student clinic. Like we oftentimes feel, well, like, what do you got for disease? And I was like, we got an intake.
Right,
But
an intake form.
as we talked about a few things like Lyme disease and cancer and a few other things tonight, the reality is these are such complex things. This isn't cold and flu.
Right, it's no silver bullet.
Yeah, and so, TikTok and Instagram cannot give good herbal care, good training.
Don't I just need ginger and lemon juice?
Mullein cures everything. So it's really important. Like, if you're looking to get care with herbs, please see an herbalist, somebody who takes the time to go over your health history. They come in here or somewhere else. Also, the American Herbalist Guild is a great resource to find an herbalist in your community. If you're in the Tampa Bay area, we've got a crap ton of we've got 20 years of graduates out there running around doing good stuff. So
We've been doing this for 20 years. Amazing.
yeah,
We are so blessed in this area that it's called competition through philanthropy. But that's why he's got the stock.
That's it. I got all the stuff, even the impepu.
Even the impepu and the kana.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm pretty much sold out of herbs, so this is the only place you can get some.
Well, there you go.
From South Africa.
Yeah, I guess there's a trip coming up sometime
Yeah,
soon.
it's true. We should
All
go.
right. Thank you all. We'll see you next month, and I'm going to figure out how to turn this down, and I'll be posting this on YouTube later until they throw me off for saying naughty words. Where's the end? Oh, nope, that didn't work. Let's try that again.
There we go.